Right. Welcome to our September Information Exchange meeting, where we'll be talking about our presenters will be talking about the NHS app, what you can use it for, what are the benefits of the app, and some additions to the app as well. It's only an hour-long meeting. I would appreciate if we listen to the presenters carefully, and if we have any questions, you can ask them at the end of the presentation, or you can use the chat box to put any questions that you have in mind straight away. If you have any questions, again, please use the reactions button below at the bottom of the screen, and we'll come to you once the presenters finish their presentation. Thank you very much, and I'll give the word to our first presenter, Thomas Clark, who is from the City and Hackney primary care team. Over to you, Thomas. Thank you.
Hi there. So, as Canaria said, my name's Thomas. I work in the local primary care team and have done for a few years. We're now part of sort of ICB or NHS North East London. But NHS North East London have got a kind of much broader strategy in relation to the NHS app and using it to interact with services. But we'll kind of talk about that a bit today. Should we put the slides up and I'll start talking through them? Okay. So today we're talking about the NHS app, and I suppose talking about that specifically is that there's a much wider market for healthcare apps. And if you've accessed GP services in the past using an app, it may have been through alternatives to the NHS app. It may have been the patient access app. But as we'll see today, they're all kind of interlinked and integrated to offer patients very similar services across the piece. So if we go to the next slide, please.
Thomas, it might be only me, but would you mind maybe moving the microphone a bit closer to you? Yeah, maybe just a little bit closer.
How's that?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So this slide is just intended to give a bit of an overview. The NHS app is something that's owned by the NHS and it's run and managed by the NHS. If you have access to it already, you would have noted there's no commercial branding or interests. So it's not used to market other products. It's just simply to access NHS services. It can be accessed by anyone age 13 and over who's registered with an NHS GP surgery in England. Basically, when you can download it from various places, and then you just need to verify your identity in order to access services that are linked into the GP's clinical system. It doesn't replace existing services, so although it enables a digital route into GP services, it doesn't replace telephone access or any other means of just walking and presenting the GP practice. I suppose that's an important point to stress, is that it's meant to be run in parallel to sort of more traditional forms of access. Next slide, please. This is an overview of the things that you can do on the NHS app. The ones listed on the left-hand side of the slide are the kind of core functionality. This is just all of the things that you should be able to do just as soon as you log in, really. And the text in bold sort of denotes those ones that are linked specifically with services your GP offers, and then some of the other ones that are not in bold text that's just some of the broader functionality that links into wider NHS kind of patient choice. So you can tick a box on there to say that you like to be an organ donor, or you can opt out of the NHS sharing your data for certain purposes around research and things like that. The blue box on the right, basically, these are all services that are also offered within the NHS app, but the degree to which you can access these services or may differ depending on the configuration, on how your GP has adjusted the settings in their clinical system or the hospital. So it may be that you can message your GP directly or contact your GP using an online form, but it will really depend what software your GP practice is using for in terms of submitting an online consultation form. So some of that stuff, some of the clarity around exactly what you see when you log into the NHS app, you may need to speak to your GP about because it's linked in with their systems. We'll want to explain that a bit on the next slide.
So, Thomas, before you continue, every time I was about to say you're breaking up and then the voice improves. Is there? Do you think we can?
I'm in a room where other people are talking, so I can try and move, but I'm about to drop off. I'll probably drop off and have to rejoin.
Okay, let's hope that.
So
Yeah, that's definitely better. But yes, okay. We don't want you to drop off, obviously. Let's hope that the connection will remain good. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Looks like Thomas has maybe frozen, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I bet he's probably going to another room and has dropped off as he predicted.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh.
yes, it
Were
looks
you
like
able? Were you also hearing the breaking?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's his end. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, let's hope that Thomas will join us shortly.
Mm.
In the meantime, I completely forgot that I wanted to run a poll question with everyone who attended today. So while we are waiting for Thomas, hopefully not for too long, would you mind responding to this one question for me? Hi, Thomas. Thomas, can you hear us? We can't hear you, Thomas. Okay. No. Would you like to try joining again? Maybe that will work, Thomas? Oh, okay, good. We have 6 people who are already using the app. That's really good. Jessica, are you one of them who voted yes? And
I am, yeah.
and Karen, you as well, I suspect.
Yeah, I'm a Bart's patient, so I've already had appointments pop on.
All right. So you might be able to share some of your personal experience if you like around towards the end. I didn't want to put the spotlights on you.
No, really handy if you've forgotten when your appointment is. It's nice to be able to go and have a look, and because often things are booked quite far in advance. So
let's not reveal too much about what Jessica will talk about.
keep the secret.
But definitely it's good to have you here. Good. So has everyone voted then? We have 6 people who are already using the NHS app. No one said no. So, because my next question would have been at the end of this meeting is, if you're not using the app, would you now consider using it? But no one said no so far. So, okay, Thomas joined us again. Thank you very much for voting. Really appreciate it. Thomas is connecting. All right.
okay, can you hear me now?
Perfectly fine. Yes, thank you, Thomas. Thank you. We've lost you for a second, but we managed to run the poll question. Whether people are using, whether people currently are using the NHS app, and 6 people said yes, no one said no. So I would assume that, yeah, better not to assume, but 6 people said yes. Perfect.
Okay, great. So on the last slide, I sort of talked about some of the services that are available by the NHS via the NHS app, and the fact that in some cases, what exactly you see when you log in and the services you have access to may be subject to the systems that your GP are using or offering or are using to deliver services. And this slide is really about that, because the NHS app is basically acts as a kind of uniform front door for all patients, and behind that sits lots of other systems that your GPs or the hospitals will use to deliver their clinical services. And these will be the systems that they use every day. So to type in the details of your consultation, or to issue you a prescription. And those systems will then integrate with the NHS app to present a kind of patient-facing view. So this kind of the little picture here that you've got on the slide is kind of intended to demonstrate that. And you've got other systems around it that you may recognize from interaction with your GP, patient access or EMIS or eConsult or AccuRx, or even Patient Knows Best, which we'll get onto a bit later on, because that's more of a hospital-based system. And basically they are feeding into the NHS app, and then the patient accesses these services via the NHS app. So this is kind of the broader piece of how NHS systems use generally. Lots of different systems will be in use by the services themselves, and they will then integrate with patient-facing systems such as the app. And that's pretty much explained there. So the patient can access all the services they need to digitally through one portal, and that's the app, or via the app on the internet. You go to the next slide. So this just summarizes how to gain access to the app. What you've got there, so you can download it from the App Store or Google Play, or you can go to this website, and then you can access it via a web browser as well. If you've never done it before, I mean, all of the people on this call have, but if you've never done it before, you'll be prompted to create an NHS login, and this basically involves a remote process to kind of verify your identity. So as I say, there it might be a photo of your driving license or a valid passport, and completing a kind of face scan. The other option, if this is kind of too technical for you, is that you can just download the app and then go to your GP practice, and who know who you are, with an ID, and just say, I would like to start accessing online services. Can I have my secure linkage key? And your practice will then give you a bit of paper with a code on it, and there will be an option when you sort of download and create your NHS login to use that key to verify your identity. So it just is a slightly less technical way of doing it. Next slide. Thanks. So this is just to kind of give an overview of usage of the app. There's a kind of dashboard that NHS England provides commissioners around, to give an idea of how much it's used in certain areas. I mean, in the top left of this slide, you can see the running total of app downloads, which is over 37 million, but that's obviously nationally. Not all people will be necessarily accessing that, but we don't have that broken down at local level. We do have the number of registrations locally, so we've got just over 146,000 people registered to use the app in City and Hackney. It's about not far off 50% of GP patients aged 13 and over. Just down here below, you've got some kind of utilization statistics as well. So this is the number of NHS app logins per month. The last month for which we've got data is just over 50,000. And then this is giving you details of the monthly number of booked and cancelled appointments. But I should stress there that, as going back to a couple of slides to when I talked about how the GPs, depending on what the GPs offer through the app, it may be that not all GPs, if they offer a kind of triage first model, they may not have that many sort of directly bookable appointments available by the app. And what they should offer at that point is another way to submit or gain access to a sort of triage, either by completing an online form via the app. But that's what I say, it can be variable what you see depending on the way that your GP's access model is set up. Next slide, please. And it's just that's the last one for me, and it just kind of, that link is to the NHS website with the patient facing information in relation to the NHS app. There's a few bits and bobs there about how to download and log in, some details about what you can do and see on the app. It's also got some of the wider governance, also information about data and privacy and how data will be used, and all of those kind of things is available there. I think that's my last slide, Canaria.
All right, thank you very much, Thomas. Really great presentation, very good information. I wonder if anyone has any questions for Thomas now. If not, I'll have a couple. I can't see any hands raising. So Thomas, I'll, on the slide where you said how it works, and we saw that patient access, e-consult, and other online platforms are currently linked to NHS app. Are these all the platforms linked to the app, or I remember there was one called Dr. IQ. Is that also linked to the NHS app, or is something different?
Yes, that is linked to the NHS app. I mean, basically what happens is that there will be people that develop systems for the NHS or for purchase by the NHS that go through, they're normally available from kind of procurement frameworks, and they go through certain accreditation. So Dr. IQ will be one of those, and there may be others as well. It really depends. Like there's one called Clinic, another one used by a practice in Hackney is called Engage Health.
Yes.
And these may offer, they basically are software providing certain functionality to allow patients to interact, some of them to allow patients to interact with their GP surgery. Others will be, patients won't really be that familiar with, because it will be the system that the GP surgery uses to kind of manage their patient list and to kind of collect data, and sort of all of the stuff that the GP is looking at when they're speaking to you and typing in the details of your consultation will be stored within a clinical system that's provided by a clinical system supplier. And the drive in terms of NHS policy, NHS IT and integration policy in recent years has been to ensure that all of those systems have the integration to be able to speak to one another, so that services can have the information to provide the right service to you at the time that you interact with them. And the NHS app acts as a front end for that. So there will be a wide range of suppliers that are accredited and integrated with the NHS app. I suppose the ones on that slide were generally limited to the ones that are prevalent in City and Hackney, and patients in this area may already have seen the kind of the branding for and be familiar with.
Right. Okay, great. And I think I spoke to you about it before in terms of whether the app provides translated materials or translated information in other languages. And I remember you saying no, so I think it's worth mentioning this here as well. And perhaps just to give a reassurance to people that this is not the only way to access services, but this is a way to access services.
Yeah, so currently the NHS app does not have a translation function. This is the people that develop the NHS app functionality, this is a national team. So I haven't been able to get an exact answer on what their plans or strategy are to allow that. But I suppose I would imagine it's something they're probably thinking about. It's just about there's probably just quite a lot of complexity around providing very safe translation functionality to an online resource when you're talking about medical terminology, because that is, translating medical terminology to different languages comes with a degree of risk. And they have to think about safety for the digital tool. But yeah, it's not available currently. But of course, it's not, if you do need interpretation services, it's not that you can always go to your practice and your practice is able to access interpretation services in order to talk to you about any health concerns or issues that you might have.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much, Thomas. Jessica, are you ready to go next?
Yeah, I'm ready.
No, over to you.
Thanks, Thomas. You really led nicely into what I'm going to talk about. So I'm Jess. I work for the Digital Enabler team across City and Hackney and Homerton, and I'm here with my colleague Karen, who gave a little bit of a spoiler as to what I was talking about, but that's fine. So at the moment, Karen and I are working on using how do we use the NHS at Homerton Hospital and across other services outside of GP services and primary care. So with the NHS app, what's coming next from Homerton Hospital's perspective is from October, patients 16 and over will be able to see their future Homerton Hospital appointments on the app. So you'll go onto the NHS app and under appointments, and then you'll click through to a screen which is hospital appointments, referral and other appointments, and then you should see your upcoming appointments on there. So you'll be able to see which hospital the appointment is at. So in this case, it will be Homerton Hospital, the date, the time, the department or location or area that you're going to, and who you're going to see as well in terms of clinician. So how can you do this? So I've just taken some screenshots, a kind of step by step, and this will also be on the Homerton Hospital website as well. We'll have a web page. So what you do, like I said, you go into the NHS app via the NHS login, which Thomas spoke about. You go to referrals, hospital and other appointments, and then you'll come to this screen which says this service is provided by Patients Know Best, or sometimes people call it PKB for short. And as Thomas mentioned, it's a company which have partnered with the NHS, and across North East London, people will have this record in the NHS app, which has been developed and supplied by Patients Know Best. So they're using their kind of expertise to develop these features for acute services or hospital services, community services, and mental health services. Going on to the next screen, so it says agree to share your NHS login information. So that's just agreeing to share your NHS number, date of birth and last name and first names and email addresses. The reason for that in the NHS app is you want to just be able to sign in once. So you use your NHS login to sign into the NHS app, and then it will kind of take you through to the Patients Know Best portal bit so you can view your appointments. You do have to register one time, so you pick a password, but going forward after that, you'll just have to use the login, your NHS login. So that's kind of everything that you see, and then your registration is complete. So I don't know if that's big enough. Just in the bottom, you can see that it will say your upcoming appointment, and then where it is, date and time. And this is just so you can have your appointments on your phone, because I know a lot of us use our phones and smart devices for a lot of things now. So just adding this functionality on is something hopefully that will make our patients' lives easier.
Yes, we've just got a question. Do you want to jump in?
Is there?
Caroline's just asked, what is identity level? Do you want to try and explain that?
Oh, so identity level will be related to the verification that Thomas spoke about when you're kind of registering for the app. So they just take the NHS login and the fact that you are verified.
I think there's another question, if you don't mind, as well.
Yeah, sorry, I can't
think
see the
they kind
chat.
of flow well. So Rachel's just asked as well, is this the same for Bath? They've started using Patients Know Best too. So yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, it's being kind of rolled out across North East London. So Barts are already using it at the moment. We're using it, Barking, Havering and Redbridge hospitals will be using it as well. And it's so everyone can, regardless of which hospital you're attending at North East London, you can be on the same platform. So we're not giving you one app for here and one app for there. We just want everyone's lives to be a lot simpler while they're coming to see us. And I know that they're using it in Northwest London. So if you were to go and visit the services there, then you would be using the same system as well. So you'll be able to go into your NHS app and then see your appointments that you have at, for example, Chelsea and Westminster. Are there any more questions, Karen? Sorry, I can't see a thing.
That's what I'm here for.
Thank
No,
you.
there isn't, but I'll let you know. Carry on.
Grand. So Thomas spoke about this before, how it's just kind of an additional way for us to speak to you. So you'll still get appointment letters in the post. You'll still get the SMS text reminders, but this is just another way that we've enabled, because everybody's different. Everybody likes a different method of communication. So this might be easier for some people, but if you prefer letters for your appointments, that's not going to stop. So you'll still receive the letters in the post. It's just another way that you can check your hospital appointments from your phone. And that's it, really. We are planning on adding more and more features, which we will update on our website, which is here. I'm sure I can copy and paste this in the chat as well. And if there are any specific queries with the NHS app and being used at Homerton or any of our community or mental health services, you can email this email address and one of the team will pick it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Another very thorough presentation as well. Lisa has asked, will this be available across the country? Would you know?
I don't know if it will be available nationally. It depends on the Thomas.
I think the NHS app integrated with GP surgeries. The services offered through that means are already available across the country, and is just slightly variable depending on what your registered GP is. All hospital trusts now have a contractual requirement to provide a hospital-held care record via the NHS app, or via live access to that hospital-held medical and clinical information that's written into their contracts. So yes, it will be available across the country, but it doesn't. Each different hospital trust may have gone with a different provider. It's only really consistently Patient Knows Best in North East London.
Thanks, Thomas.
Thank you, Thomas. And Jessica, from our previous chat about this, you mentioned that Patients Know Best provides translated information.
Yeah, so if you go to the portal at the bottom, there is a little thing saying, it just looks like the Google Translate kind of, you can select from 22 languages. I can...
And is that, because Catherine, I'll come to you in a minute if you don't mind. As Thomas was saying, translating information that has medical information in it can be quite sensitive and not as easy. So I guess this is not just the Google Translate, is it?
No, this isn't just Google Translate. So with these initial phases of our kind of project, I guess, the appointment information that can be translated, and eventually we are introducing letters as well, which should be translated, but PKB, or Patients Know Best, have worked on translating these kind of 22 languages they started off with, so they have considered the safety risk to that.
Excellent, thank you. Catherine, over to you, and then I'll read the question in the chat box.
I think that we've had from a resident a complaint about Patient Knows Best is like a commercial organisation, aren't they? So they then have patient data. So, the issues around a sort of commercial organisation holding NHS data, and people feeling uncomfortable about that, and sort of issues of how whether there's, I don't know, greater possibility for data breaches, but simply the fact that they've consented for the NHS to have their data, but they haven't consented for a commercial organisation to have their data. That issue, yeah.
So I guess this very much goes back to what Thomas was saying before about kind of how do we explain this? Thomas, feel free to jump in if you want to explain. The way you explained it was really succinct, about the different systems. The data, PKB don't hold any of the data, so they will control data, but they don't hold any of it. And any data that they do send is coded or encrypted.
Right.
So they don't have any of the data. And as Thomas mentioned before about kind of the different software suppliers going through either a framework, or they go through a lot of checks and balances. So they're working with the NHS, and the NHS know that they're safe, and they're not there to take any data.
Okay, so they don't have the database, they don't have the patient data, they do have it, but they're to be trusted.
I think maybe the data just passes through the patients know best rather than staying and sticking there.
Is that right?
Is that?
Can I mean, I can sort of jump in. I mean, I
Yeah.
suppose the whole NHS runs on clinical, well, electronic computer systems that are not developed by the NHS. They are like, so in every hospital there is a patient administration system. In every GP practice there is a principal clinical system, and the GPs use that as a tool, or the hospital clinicians use that as a tool to record the treatment they're giving and the information that they're getting from the patient. And that's held in secure data centers that are ostensibly the property of those suppliers, but those suppliers are bound by contracts, and they can't access those data they can't access the data held within those systems, but they do process them in an encrypted form. So it's similar with patient knows best. What the data that patient knows best is feeding into the app to be viewed by patients is the data that's held within the hospital's patient administration system for hospital use when they're delivering services. And what's happening is that data is passing encrypted from the hospital's patient administration system to the app, so a patient can view it in an encrypted form, but it's encrypted end to end. So, and it's similar across. I mean, the NHS don't develop electronic clinical systems. We have to go to commercial entities to procure those systems, but there's contracts, and there's all sorts of data protection legislation and contractual requirements around that. That's why there's a lot of accreditation loopholes to jump through for any supplier that ever wants to integrate with the app or even provide these services to patients.
Okay, that's yeah, reassuring. Could I ask another thing?
Yes, and then we'll move to.
I've also heard complaints from people that I think it's like patient access and things like that. They maybe more in the past maybe, but they've been encouraged to sign up to it by their GP surgeries, and then they find that they're being bombarded with things that are selling them stuff, selling them, get a blood test, for this or that, when, well, if you need the blood test, you'd go to your doctor, get it for free.
This is this goes back to one of the slides as well, where I was saying the NHS is like the NHS app in particular is an NHS owned bit of software, and it's owned by the NHS, it's run by the NHS, there's no commercial interests on it. So the patient that raised that complaint probably saw the advert for the blood test was in EMIS's proprietary patient access app. And the patient access app belongs to EMIS, who provide clinical systems to GP practices, and it is one of the apps you can use to book an appointment directly with your GP, or to view your medical record, or to order a repeat prescription, which are those services are digital services that GP practices are contractually obliged to provide to their patients, and all of the kind of systems architecture and integration is set up to provide that to patients. We, as a strategy point of view in North East London, are directing people to use the NHS app as an alternative to that, for exactly the reason you've just said, is that we would prefer our patients, when they're accessing NHS services, do not see things being marketed to them in relation to it, to health services and things that they might not need. We want them to have a kind of marketing free way to access those services, and that's why this meeting and going forward is why we're promoting the NHS heavily as the thing that the patient should use, and we're advising all the practices that they should be doing it. It's just that the patient access app predates the NHS app. So now we've got a kind of bit of a job on our hands to kind of move anyone that was previously engaging with their GP practice through these means, to move them onto our preferred kind of model.
Yes, I think that fits my personal experience, where I think I used patient access or something like that to access making appointments and and repeat prescriptions, but now I'd use the NHS app. But I don't know why the NHS doesn't ban them from, they've got privileged access. Why don't they ban them from doing these dodgy ads, really?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I mean, I suppose the patient access app itself is proprietary. It's owned by EMIS, so I don't know. It may just be that I don't know how much influence NHS have. I think the solution to that problem was to develop an NHS owned and kind of app to try and to usurp it, if you like.
Thank you.
Right. So just to recap is, if you are already using an app, you better use this app through your NHS app for an ad-free experience. And of course, just to make sure that if you have access to any appointments to the hospital, now from October, you will be able to see this information on your NHS app as well. Do we have a date, Jessica, when in October that will be released?
The appointments, sorry.
The patients know best when that feature will start in
next week.
Next week. Perfect. All right. So I've got a couple of questions, and I can see, Caroline, you raised your hand. And you have a question in the chat box. Did you want to ask that question?
I just wanted to comment on something that was fed back, if that's okay.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
The feedback has been that, is this the same app that people were meant to use during COVID? And there's a little bit of resistance around that. So I just want, as you know, Jessica, I think I've said this before, just wanted to say that here, really.
I think that's a very good question.
What's happening, to make it, how are we being encouraged to use it? I'm a patient and I haven't had anything yet telling me that we're going over. I haven't had anything. So I'm just want to know, like, I thought I'd just put that there.
Yeah.
Thomas?
It is the same. It's the same app. I think when I had the slide with the kind of the graphs on it earlier on, you can, on the time series for downloads and registrations, you could see that around the time of like sort of spring and summer 2021, when after the first wave of the pandemic, there was just a huge increase in lots of people downloading the app, and that's because this spike here, and that is because that was associated with people wanting to access their COVID pass so they could sort of get a bit more freedom and do things, go on holiday maybe. So yes, it is the same app that you can access your COVID pass from, although it's not the only way you can access a COVID pass. You can do that via the internet too. In terms of promotion, there's not so far, because it's, as they've been kind of turning on the different functionality, there hasn't been any national campaign around promoting the NHS app, and it's largely fallen to organisations like mine, like NHS North East London, working with GP practices to try and promote uptake among their patients. And obviously that involves a bit of work on the part of the GP practice to support those patients to use the app effectively. And it's just trying to kind of, there will be benefits for the practice in that respect, because if someone who needs a repeat prescription is regularly ordering it via the app as opposed to calling up the practice, then it's just a much more efficient way for everybody, right? So there are benefits, but it's just sometimes it's quite difficult for practices that are very busy to kind of get their buy-in to do all of the promotion that's needed. But I think this is changing a lot now, because the app is becoming more and more embedded in what we're asking practices to do around access and improving access. And I think so certainly over the next 6 months, I would expect you to see a lot more kind of promotion of the NHS app. Do you mind me? Are you registered in City and Hackney? Yeah. So
Yes.
I think it would definitely be worth approaching your GP practice to just see if they can, if you do need any support around using the app, or yeah, because like they may well be able to either. I know there's some work going on with sort of practices and PCNs around supporting patients to use the NHS app more sort of for their benefit, and also there may be volunteers that they have around the practice that can support it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. We had a question to which you already responded, but I'll read it here for this meeting. Do we know what the take-up is like of the app across Northeast London, or even better for City and Hackney? And Thomas, you said around 50% are registered in City and Hackney, although this is higher for Neiman practice, which is the only practice in the City of London.
Yeah, I think it was Rachel that asked that, and I think
Yes.
I've been in meetings with Rachel before, because I think, do you work in City Health Watch? So I just thought that might be relevant information to you.
Yes, I do. So sorry,
Oh, hi,
Thomas.
Rachel. Sorry, I didn't recognize you.
Yeah, no, sorry. I've got COVID, so I'm not going to put my camera on because I will scare everybody. But yes, Thomas, that is me asking the question. So.
Right.
So Neiman practice actually is, of all the practices in City and Hackney, has the highest proportion of patients registered to use the app, and also the highest sort of activity when you look at practice level kind of activity around repeat prescriptions and accessing online medical records, and also bookings and things. Haven't spoken to them in enough detail to know why that is, whether they've really tried to promote it or not, but yeah, they should be able to provide a bit more detail.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel, and I hope you'll get better soon.
Thank you.
And we have another question from Lisa. She's asking, will the patient access also work with S1? Lisa,
with System 1?
Oh, with System 1. Sorry, I wasn't sure what S1 is.
I think
System
that
1?
means System 1.
Lisa, would you like to maybe ask your question? Would you like to unmute yourself? Oh, you have to unmute yourself, Lisa. S1.
It says she's on an iPhone, so it may be a bit difficult. But I think I'm going to take S1 to be System 1. Yeah, System 1. So System 1 is an alternative clinical system for GPs to use. So it's the same as EMIS. It offers the same. It meets the same need, or say as EMIS for a GP practice, in that they can run their service through it. But it's actually a different supplier, so it's a competitor effectively to EMIS. So System 1 doesn't have patient access, but they probably will have yes, exactly, Karen. They don't have patient access, but they probably will have their own version of a patient access type app. And System 1 is also integrated with the NHS app. So there's no System 1 practices in City and Hackney, but if in the rest of NEL there are, and if you were a patient registered at one of those System 1 practices, you could still access all the same services app, but it would just be System 1 that would be integrating with the NHS app, and as opposed to EMIS.
Right. I've never heard of System 1 myself, really.
There's really very little reason why a patient would know EMIS or System 1, really, because it's just.
Right. Oh, everyone froze. Is it me? Hello? Oh, can you? Because everyone froze suddenly on my screen. Okay. Thank you, Thomas. And just I was just thinking about what Caroline said about the NHS COVID app and whether these are the same. Well, I now realize that during COVID I had two NHS apps, and what was called NHS COVID-19 app, and the other one was just the NHS app. Because I recently deleted the COVID-19 app. But the NHS app is the one that I perhaps will see my medical records. So am I?
I think they integrated. They
Yeah.
integrated them.
Okay. So I was probably outdated. I had to update myself on that. But then there is only one NHS app.
Yeah.
That's correct?
Yeah, and it's just called the NHS app.
Yes, all right, excellent. And I'll say that I've recently reviewed some of the GP websites and listened to all their messages as well. And I would say that many of them would encourage patients to download the NHS app and to use it to access services online, which means that the messages are out there. And hopefully the numbers of people downloading the app and using it will increase, especially when, after in October, when this additional feature is added for people to see their hospital appointments. And I'm sure the translated materials will be much appreciated by the large, diverse communities in Hackney that perhaps may not have English as their first language. Any further questions for our great speakers today, Jessica and Thomas?
I mean, I'm sure there's going to be loads. Do you know what I mean? As people do start
Yes.
using it, and I know that you put a link into.
Yes, hold on a second.
Where we can get support. Is there a frequently asked questions type? You know, easy I don't know, the NHS app for dummies type. You know that I just something easy for me. Or because there will be things that come up and we don't have anybody to ask because we'd be at home.
Yeah. So from our perspective, we're working with the communications department at Homerton to create a web page, and it's got a lot of frequently asked questions about the bits that I spoke about today. And we're also planning on speaking to our partner organisations such as the council, just to get the information onto there as well, because we're aware that not everybody visits the hospital website as their first point of call. So we are working on that, and hopefully that information should go on for next week. So on the link that I've shared, it will have, there's information, then there's little drop down boxes with frequently asked questions.
Yes, I can see that the link in the last slide of your presentation, Jessica, links to the frequently asked questions, and I'll make sure that I include this in the post-event post-event information. Something is happening here. Yes, and I'll make sure that by Wednesday next week, hopefully, you will everyone who booked to join this event and join this event will receive our post-event information with the slides that were presented today, and some more information about how to download and how to use the NHS app. But I think the reassurance that Thomas gave for people who find it difficult to do it themselves, they can always pop into their general practice, their GP, and get their help to set up the app. I mean, it was difficult for me as well when I was doing it in the beginning, and that was a long time ago. So and also I'll see if I'll also provide information about services or organizations in Hackney that might be able to help not that techie people to use the NHS app as well, and how to navigate themselves through the system and the features. Any questions before we?
Yeah, sorry, Panari, I just want to add, just only it's not only when they set up the app ongoing, when they want to book or anything, is this opportunity still available? Because people, they might call us and then asking us if these things is still available, or just only was set up on the beginning. I just want to
Yes,
be clear.
of course, it's our usual signposting to provide people with information that might be useful for them, and then they will use this information when and if they feel that they want to use it. So I'm sure that will be clear in the post-event information. Thank you, Leah. Then if no further questions for Jessica and Thomas, if you have any, of course, you're welcome to email me, and I'll pass them on to our speakers who already told me previously that they don't mind responding to any questions that will come after that. I hope that's still the case. Yes, yep. Perfect. All right, then I'll say thank you very much for joining, Jessica and Thomas, for a great presentation, Karine as well, for helping out and responding to questions. And have a lovely evening, and I'll see you in 2 months' time for our next information exchange meeting.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
very much.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Jessica. Bye, Thomas.
Hi, Caroline.
Right.